Minister, thank you so much for taking the time. I guess just first of all, we've got about 6 weeks or so to go left in the presidency. What more can we expect before your term expires?
Well, we do our best in order to accelerate the enlargement of the European Union towards the Western Balkans. The countries in their region have been waiting for being allowed to enter for 15 years in an average. So there are some who have been waiting even for a longer time. And we think that this fact, that there has been no major forward progress when it comes to their accession procedures, has been ruining a lot the credibility of not only the European Union as such, but its enlargement policy as well. So we will try to make sure that by the end of the year, another IGC meeting takes place with Albania, letting them open a new cluster of chapters. And we also hope for an IGC meeting with Montenegro, where 4 chapters could be closed. Closing a chapter with them has not happened for a very long time either. And we also do hope to have an IGC with Serbia. Serbia is clearly ready to move forward on the integration path. They are clearly ready to open the 3rd cluster, which is about inclusive growth and competitiveness. And to be honest, we don't see any kind of real reason why these 3 IGC meetings could not take place. And also, as based on the success we have reached on the last Budapest meeting of the informal European Council, the Budapest Declaration about the competitiveness of the European Union, we have to move forward when it comes to the implementation. So we still have some job for the remaining 6 weeks for sure.
Talking of the Budapest Declaration, how significant was that, and tell me what can be achieved to see the EU become more competitive in the future?
Well, look, if you look at the reality or at the diagnosis set out in the Draghi report, which have a lot of overlap, thanks God, you see that the weight of the European Union when it comes to global economy and global trade has been shrinking a lot. And we used to be number 2 in the world when it comes to contribution to the global GDP. Now we are number 3 only. When it comes to investments, it is obvious that the many Eastern companies have overtaken the Western companies. It is obvious that the success of the corporate structures of many Western companies depend on the supplies from the East. So this reality should be respected, should be put into consideration, and we should cut bureaucracy. We should cut absolutely unnecessary regulations. We should let member states work on their own tax measures, and we should not hinder any companies to work together with another one coming from another geographic region. So I think that the attractiveness of European Union, attractiveness of European Union economy must be strengthened through these measures.
And the Draghi report says there's a spending shortfall around $800 billion, and innovation is another huge area of concern. What can be done to prevent this European brain drain that we've been seeing?
Well, first of all, we should make it very clear that the European Union should allocate much more funds to innovation, high added value production, and R&D. And in the meantime, we should get rid of a very harmful practice, namely the very slow procedures of approving member states spending on attracting more investments into their own countries. Because what is the methodology now? In a case as a member state would like to give like an incentive to a company to invest in, we need the approval of the European Commission, getting which might take 2-3 years as well. So when we compete for investments with third countries, with the US, with North America, with Asia, if we tell the investor that, okay guys, we are ready to giving you this kind of cash incentive, but whether this is going to be valid or not, or approved or not, well, it will take 2-3 years. I mean, the investor will definitely make the investment somewhere else. So these kind of procedures must be shortened, must be made easier, more simple, through which we could become more competitive, no question.
And in recent days, there have been plenty of back and forth when it comes to the deforestation law in the Parliament. Do you think this is a precursor for wider debates about climate regulation and competitiveness? Is this something we can expect in the next few years?
Well, here we have two very important principles I would like to stick to. First, that the issue of environmental protection must not be ideologized. It's not an ideological issue. That's a very, very practical issue. We have to protect our planet. We have to be able to, maintain it and give it over to our successors. So whether to protect your environment or not is not an ideological question. This is not green ideology. This is a practical obligation of ours. So there must be a balance kept between improving competitiveness and protecting the environment. We Hungarians, I think, can speak about this in a credible way because we are among those very few countries of the world which have been increasing their GDP parallel to decreasing the emission. Our other principle is that the trade and economy related issues must not be confused with issues which have nothing to do with trade and economy. Because if we confuse things with trade which have nothing to do with trade, then at the end of the day we will only trade internally, and this is not what we need, I think.
And the French president said recently that we're bracing for a world of trade wars. And last week, the European Commission said that we're seeing more economic uncertainty. Given that fact, how essentially should the EU prepare itself as we enter this realm? And do you agree with that sentiment?
Look, we are really concerned about those voices here which are suggesting that we are moving towards an economic Cold War. We are also against those efforts which try to divide the world into blocks again, because we Hungarians have lived 40 years as losers of a period which was based on division of the world into blocks. So instead of blocks, we want connectivity. So what is our answer? Our answer is economic neutrality. What does economic neutrality mean? It means that we do trade with countries and economic entities from both directions, east and west. Economy must be liberated from ideological burdens, ideological restrictions. This is the most important, and then we can avoid the world being divided into blocks again, and we can avoid economic or trade-related Cold War to be launched.
And when it comes to economic neutrality, we've of course in recent months seen a growing hostility when it comes to trade between the EU and China. What can be done to reach that mutually beneficial solution that both Beijing and Brussels say they want to achieve?
Look, I think it's very easy. We just should not interfere into issues which are operational on their own. We see what kind of benefits and positive outcome you can draw from such kind of a respect-based and trust-based cooperation. So I would argue in favor of letting the Eastern and Western companies to work together in Europe, and instead of cutting the ties, instead of restricting the cooperation, instead of putting obstacles on the way, we should help the European companies to be strong enough to cooperate with the Western companies. Look, when it comes to the tax or tariffs being imposed on the Chinese electromobility industry, we have raised the question to the Commission why on earth this measure is necessary. They have referred to their willingness to protect the representatives of the European automotive industry. Then we talked to the biggest representatives and the strongest representatives of European industry, which said, please don't do that. It's against our interest. Don't do that. So then what's the reason? There's no rational reason, only ideological, only political, why European Commission has made this measure. And that can be, killing to the competitiveness of the European economy again.
How are the tariffs playing out in Hungary?
It's not really Hungary who is being harmed by this. It's the entire European economy and those companies who create the backbone of the European economy. The country has attracted a lot of Chinese investors who then come to Europe, produce in Europe, will not be targeted by the tariff measures in a way if they had stayed only with the production in China. So we have benefited a lot about Chinese investments already. They have created jobs, they have been reliable employers, they have brought in super developed high tech. So we don't see the reason why we should not encourage them to come and invest more and more in Europe. So we are open to these companies as well. But generally speaking, we as a country, which has been integrated very deeply into the European Union when it comes to economy, for us, if the European economy is not performing well, is bad news, no question.
Now, ministers are gathering here in Brussels in the wake of the US election results. How has the mood been impacted by the elections? What are you sensing from your colleagues here at the Council?
Well, I think everybody is pretty nervous, except for us. And I can understand the reason. If they recall what they had said about President Trump during the last 4 to 8 years, and if they think that President Trump remembers all those, then I think there's a good reason why they are nervous, I think that Europe should pay more respect to the American citizens, because bashing their presidents, bashing the outcome of the elections, basically it means that the right or the ability of the American people to make a decision about their own future is being challenged by those who act like this. So what we argue in favor is as tight cooperation with US as possible, and actually the fact that President Trump has won the election could offer a great chance to Europe as well to finally get rid of the very unsuccessful and failed strategy, which is a pro-war, pro-migration strategy. We should walk away from that and change to a no-war, no-migration strategy. But so far, at least what I have seen here today, is a bit of lack of understanding about this new reality, or at least a denial of the new reality.
Well, speaking of some of those comments, especially regarding the war in Ukraine with the US administration, it's been reported that the Biden administration now giving a green light for missiles to hit deep into Russian territory. What's your reaction to that?
Well, we are pretty concerned about such moves, such ideas, because such measures can increase the risk of escalation. We are a neighboring country. So in case of an escalation, we are immediately affected. We are not thousands of kilometers away. We are in the geographic neighborhood. So we strongly argue against the pro-war policy of the European Union and the current American administration. We strongly argue in favor of peace. We think that instead of increasing weapon deliveries, we should argue in favor of ceasefire, because ceasefire could open up the way to peace negotiations. Here, the German federal chancellor was pretty much criticized by many. Why? He has called President Putin. I think this is the only way. How you make peace, how you end suffering, how you give back the hope for a peaceful life of Europe, especially Ukrainian citizens, for the future.
And come January, when Donald Trump takes the oath of office, how do you think that his presidency will influence the EU's stance on Ukraine going forward?
Knowing President Trump, we have now the best hope for peace if you put into consideration the last 1,000 days since the war has broken out. So from our side, from Hungarian side, we support all measures aiming at peace, all measures aiming at ending of this conflict. I see that the European colleagues are absolutely not happy for that, but seeing the outcomes of the recent elections here in Europe, it's obvious that the pro-peace patriotic parties have been gaining, and I think that that will formulate the European policies as well.
And just to switch to the Middle East, there's been calls from the Foreign Affairs Chief to suspend political talks with Israel. What's Hungary's position on that?
Well, that would be a very bad decision, I think, because once you cut the channels of communication, you lose the hope for peace. So I do believe that without consultations, without lines of communication being kept open, without diplomatic channels being operational, there's no hope for peaceful resolution of any kind of conflicts in the world. So as we argue in favor of diplomatic channels to be reopened when it comes to Ukraine and Russia, we argue against cutting the channels when it comes to Israel as well.